Brian White is out among them in the great state of Nevada, somewhere in the Las Vegas region, I assume.
Pretty
No,
close to it. I'm actually in St. George, Utah,
Utah.
just over
That's
the
right.
border. Just
I'm
over the border.
confused. I'm confused about which light show this is.
Hmm.
So, how do you like St. George?
It is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful, and a little upscale, but it's growing and all that. It's wonderful.
I think I may have mentioned to you before, I considered moving my manufacturing company to St. George to save money on rent and utilities.
Yeah, the utilities, it turns out, are 5 cents a kilowatt hour because they are in proximity to hydro.
Right.
And back in the 50s and 60s when they were building all the hydro, that was the concession is we're going to upend your world a little bit, but we'll give you cheaper utilities forever.
Right. Yeah, cool place. We decided not to do it because I just really happen to like Southern California. And we even considered keeping offices in Southern California and only having manufacturing in Utah. And we decided that was a very, very bad idea. So anyway, all right, on to subject matter at hand. You and I usually talk about Tesla. So let's talk about Tesla today.
I've heard of that company. I've heard of that gentleman. What would you like to know about him?
So we've had a whole bunch of folks increasing their price targets for Tesla. That's been a good morning. And so the stock has been doing quite well this morning. Last time I checked, we're up above 271 for the first time since September of 2023.
Isn't that exciting? Is it exciting or is it unsurprising, but just kind of
It's
a pl-
time. It's
it
time.
is about time.
It's time. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to run down some questions that I had after the meeting last week, after the call. It was still, these are things that are still bugging me and bugging others in some cases as well. And I'm assuming that because you do have future in your name, that you will have a better idea about some of these things. So the number one confusion coming out of the earnings call, and I mean really smart people are on both sides of this issue, is there going to be a 2.5 vehicle or not? Is Elon's statement that it would be dumb to have a new vehicle with a steering wheel on it mean that there will not be a 2.5? Or does his statement that we're going to increase sales by 20 to 30% next year, which will be partially due to the fact that we're adding new vehicles, mean that we will have a 2.5? Wow, where are we on this?
I understand your frustration. I think it's been choreographed reasonably clearly. I could be wrong. We know that there will be a RoboCab at some point.
Right.
And we know that the RoboCab will not be converted to a full meat driven vehicle. I made a video last night with two retired auto engineers where we went through some of the aspects of the car. We went through it aspect by aspect and said, could this translate to a human driven car? And what we realized is the battery would be frustratingly small for a human driven car. If you were trying to drive it for anything other than a taxi purpose, it would be frustrating. So you'd need a bigger battery. The motor is surely going to be underpowered compared to any Tesla ever built because you do not need breakneck speed. So you'd have to change the motor. The seats probably will not adjust. Certainly not in as many axes as the current ones. So you'd need different seats and therefore a different wiring harness. You put in mirrors, you need a wiring harness for that. The wiring harness is completely different. And then they said, well, we'd probably want panoramic glass. And if we're going to try and jam people in the back, which the people here who had been to the event said, that's not going to happen. What you're describing is a different car. That was the NV91. It was canceled in April. So we know that's not coming. Now, the 2.5, I think Elon made reasonably clear is happening. Okay. They want to build something that can expand the TAM with the existing lines with a substantial number of parts in common. Would it be a whole new model? Or would it be like the Mexico edition standard range where it's the same car on the outside, but just cheaper? It's got fewer speakers. It's got no rear infotainment. It's got cloth seats instead of vegan leather. There are a bunch of little ways you could cut down the price without building a whole new car. but I'm still hopeful that it'll be more different. There's the Honda Accord sedan, but there's also the hatchback.
Yeah.
Is that a whole new car? I mean, I would say it is, but the front half of it was still the same car. So you can build cars with parts in common without it being a whole new car.
So overall, you think there will be a 2.5 coming out sometime Q1, probably.
Well, I would say within the next year is my expectation.
Okay.
And I would think that definitely by the end of Q1, we'll know either way. But neither would surprise me if they say, look, we are seeing what's going on with autonomy and we know it's close enough to just go that direction for the short term. But if it's still going to be 2-3 years, I think they'll want to explore options like that. And we know they're very agile, very nimble, and can turn on a dime and can get new things out there as needed if they make sense.
Okay. Number two, they didn't really talk about the Cybertruck at the earnings call at all. And the last I heard, we were at about 2,000 a week. I was curious whether the run rate or what would be a probable run rate by the end of this year.
Mm, that's great. I would say 1,000 is far too low. I'd say 5,000 is far too high. I'd say in the 2,000 to 3,000 a week range would be reasonable. The question is, I see a lot of people on hold saying the 80,000 I'm okay with. I need that federal credit. Where is it?
Yeah.
And I've seen conflicting theories on why it's not eligible. Bo from the Tesla Service Center in Oregon gave a presentation on my channel where he said he doesn't think it's going to come ever because the critical mineral requirement is now at or above 50%. But it's 50% from US and free trade partners. So in total, there's 21 countries. And to get 50% of your lithium, nickel, and cobalt from those countries shouldn't be a prohibitive situation. The batteries are already made in the US. The packs are already made in the US. Both of those are happening for the Cybertruck in Texas or in California at the Cato Road facility. So it's not the manufacturing, it's the minerals. And I think we'll get there. I think the delay is paperwork. So I would hope that we would have clarity by now, obviously. But since we don't have clarity, I would hope that when Q1 rolls around and we've got the new 2025 guidelines from fueleconomy.gov, I think is the webpage that lists which vehicles qualify, that the Cybertruck would once again qualify. It qualified in 2023 if you could buy one for 80,000, but of course you could not. They were not that price. So I think it's just a matter of paperwork. And when we see that price drop by that additional 10% ish, that people will jump, because it's not the price, it's the principle. If that 7,500 is available, give it to me. That's my money.
So are you saying that you think the run rate by the end of 2025 will be based on demand rather than?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. Because I think the run rate is already a bit constrained by demand. If they could still sell them at 100,000 and couldn't possibly sell enough, then it would be then they'd be doing that. So they already had to drop the price to increase demand. And the question, and we know we're at a positive margin on a per unit vehicle on a per unit basis. The question is, how much lower can you get it at this point without going negative? Because I really don't think they wish to go negative. That's something that businesses don't like to do.
I see. So I've been wondering. So that answers a different question, which is I couldn't figure out why I haven't even had an offer at the 80,000 level. I mean, that has not, I'm about 166,000, something like that is our number. And we have not had an offer to purchase at the 80,000 level.
Okay, well, that's good information because I know a lot of people with much later reservations than yours have been invited to configure. And I would think that with your proximity to the real sales base of California in Riverside there, that your number would be coming up. So yeah, I wonder what that's about.
That is odd. Okay, all right. Number three, wouldn't you expect to sell out every factory in the United States once in fact, maybe even worldwide, once FSD is unsupervised and available in Europe and China. Wouldn't you expect each of those, just that fact alone would completely cause Tesla to go into overdrive in production and be able to fill every order? I mean,
Absolutely.
yes.
Just
Okay.
absolutely. Just
Just absolutely.
absolutely. Because well, I don't want it. I didn't ask you. I asked the fleet guy over there who's ready to buy 100. And if he can do it, he's going to place those orders. And really, I think that stands to move the used market as well. I saw some real crybabies on X complaining that I bought a Plaid in 22 and now it's worth half what I paid or less than half what I paid. My friend, if you bought any car in 22, it's worth half what you paid. It may not be half the MSRP, but you didn't pay as MSRP. Camrys were going for 10 to 20,000 over MSRP. That 10 grand is simply gone. And for some reason, you've chosen to omit it from your calculations, even though that was very real money you had to pay. So I think the depreciation could invert. I think if FSD was solved if it became unsupervised in the next 3 to 6 months, the used Model 3 you purchased today will be worth more in 3 months or 6 months. That's not a guarantee. Nothing in life is, but but if you're looking to get one, I don't think you should wait. I think you should move on it when the time is right. The people who say, should I buy a car now or should I do you need a car? Because if you don't need a car, don't buy one.
Right.
But if you need one, buy one.
Right. Will Juniper be launched in all markets simultaneously or one by one?
One by one. One by one. And we have reason to believe this because the leaks came out of China. It's underway. And China's the last market to leak. Their social media is walled off from ours. We just don't overlap the way you might want us to. Whereas in the US, everybody knows somebody. There are 125,000 employees. I'd say at least half of them are in the US, and a lot of us know some of them. And then you've got all the parts suppliers who I know. And it's crazy to think that they would have that they would be already working on it in the factories here and that we just wouldn't be aware of it. So I think it will go China first and then other markets. And the beauty is if it is China first, which it is because we know it is, that means that Australia, New Zealand, and Europe are going to be getting it right out of the gate.
Okay. And then number 5, how does the customer base for Megapack potentially differ in China? And do you think the pricing will be the same?
Okay. So first, I should clarify. Model Y in China, in Europe. I was realizing after I said it, a lot of those are going to be coming from Berlin, so maybe not Europe as one of the leaders in that, unless they go model by model. In which case, maybe you might find just a rear-wheel drive Y Juniper, while the European ones are still the long range and performance. Okay, how will it differ? Tremendously. The use case, the business case, it's all very different. The first big difference in China is there's one set of rules. Here, it's a patchwork quilt. In Riverside, the rules could be very different than in LA, not that far away. And then you go east, as soon as you cross the state line, everything changes again. And it can be county by county, can have different permitting requirements, different interconnect rules, and who the competitors are in each of those markets. That doesn't happen in China. What the top officials say goes. So it'll be a lot easier to get it installed and running. But in terms of pricing, it's harder to know. I haven't gotten into that side of it. It's awfully hard to find. When I was doing my assessments of which countries come next, you have to lean real heavily on Google Translate because all the academic stuff is only in the language of each country. Right. So I haven't been able to dig deep enough to know the intricacies of it. But in terms of pricing, China's a very competitive market, and they have a lot of domestic manufacturers already providing these. So they would have to compete with them, not just on quality, but also on price, because quality will get you so far, but it can't make it a slam dunk. So I think they will be cheaper to make, but they will also sell for less, just like we're seeing with the 3s and Ys in China. They're very good cars, but they're cheaper to make and cheaper to sell. So that's, yeah, I do think, but I'm not looking for margin compression on Megapack. I just think that the spin up time on how long it takes to get paid from initial delivery to final payment will be shorter.
All right. So this is an esoteric question, but I think it's a very big and important one. And it's been argued a lot of different ways with hosts, the various co-hosts on my channel. So when Optimus first comes out, we know that there will probably be heavier engineering requirement as it's first in the factories. Somebody's going to be overlooking the shoulders of the Optimus early on. The question becomes, how many engineers will it take to change a light bulb? How many Tesla engineers will it seriously, how many supervisors will be involved per each Optimus in the beginning? And how fast will that go away to where it's like maybe one supervisor for every 10 Optimi?
That is a very good question. And of all your guests, not to pick favorites, and I'll put myself in the mix with all of them. I think Brian W does the best, and you can pick which one that is because it's up to you, dear viewer, which Brian W is the best. Let us know in the comments.
The one that's white or the one that's wrong?
It's not that simple, It sounds simple. So, the longer they delay it, the fewer supervisors they need. They could deploy it today if even one-to-one supervision was what the market really wants. There are people who would absolutely buy it today, even with just a developer toolkit and no autonomy. I just need it to stand at the front of the store and wave to people, or hand them a number, something. I mean, you would sell a lot of them. They don't want that. They want it to be as autonomous as possible. Just like with the cars, they could have a supervised fleet that is remotely operated, but that's not what it's about. And people love to overlook that. I get a lot of very confident criticism from people who just don't understand the vision. They don't understand how Tesla's been choreographing their intentions for years. And I get it. You can't follow all these companies that closely. If you're going to follow 10, 20, 50 companies, you're going to do a bad job in all of them. And that's not true. Obviously, most of those companies are very similar to each other. This one just happens to be different. So I would say, how long before they can get down to a human to bot ratio of 10 bots for every human? I don't know. And I don't know if it's knowable because the tasks are so different. If the tasks are things like gardening and weeding, I think it would be there as soon as they choose to configure it for that. We've seen it learning household tasks. I think the only thing it needs to do is look around and say, is there any fire hazard here? If not, I can go unsupervised. If there's candles, because it's like, well, a bot isn't going 70 miles an hour. Yeah, but if it's working near an open flame, that's a consideration. But open flames are less common than they used to be. So I think I'd say 10-to-1 supervision, 10 bots for every human would be possible, absolutely possible on the first rollout. But I don't expect the first rollout of that scale for another year and a half.
Okay. All right. I happen to believe that batteries are the second most important thing that Tesla does. And the first would, of course, be AI. But batteries are just crazy important. And so I have two questions on that. Number one, do we have any idea if there's been any change in the plan to deploy or to create 500 gigawatt hours of 4680 at Reno?
I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe the plans have changed. You can look at the footprint and say, wasn't this factory supposed to be like 6 times larger? And it was, but the technology to make the batteries improved by that much. If you look, the footprint was quite small when it hit the capacity that they were expecting from the entire build out. It is very reasonable to assume that efficiencies have increased since then. And it's reasonable to assume that because US sales continue to grow without a real shortage of 2170s out of Nevada. In terms of the 4680, I don't know. I know Panasonic had made valid 4680s that they had sent to Tesla for validation. And at that point, as soon as they're validated, which I assume has already happened, they can begin configuring 4680 production in Nevada. I feel like they will still need to increase that footprint a bit, especially as they ramp into semi. And I don't know how critical it is to get that started now. Batteries are very difficult to make. Cheap batteries are very easy to make. Good batteries are very hard to make. And because you can, at the North America Battery Show I went to last year, there were many, many manufacturers who said, we have 4680s, they're ready to go. And I go, when I test them, how consistent are they going to be? And they said, well, we don't have the metrics right now in front of us. Yes, you do. You just don't dare say what they are, because what you've made is
not that
great. It may be fine for, an e-bike or something, but it's not automotive grade.
So related question, still talking about Reno, the beginning of production of the CATL lines. I mean, we have 40 gigawatt hours of CATL production capacity over there. We've bought the equipment. We haven't heard squat.
I've had a chance to talk to a number of people who know what's going on with the 46 with the CATL equipment, and I've asked them some very pointed questions, and they have told me about the weather. They have told me about sports, and some of them wanted to talk politics, but I don't really do that. So they are being very tight-lipped, and I'm able to get a lot of retired engineers to talk, but people who could lose their job for talking to me are very good at changing the subject. It's an art form, and I have to respect that. We know that equipment has been purchased. We know it's going in. We have every reason to believe it's going into Nevada. We don't know how or when it's coming, but it's very exciting because it is just lithium, iron, phosphate, all easily acquirable. If you get this running out of Nevada, your standard range or lower cost vehicles once again qualify for the credit. I did the math a few weeks back to see how many, if the LFPs are what's going into the Cybercab, how many Cybercabs you could make with this first round of equipment. And the answer was quite a few. Quite a few. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not urgent today, but the LFP batteries also go into the Megapack and the Powerwall. So it is, there has been talk in the last couple days, I saw on Reuters that there is talk to ease up on the EV tariff wars. China doesn't want it. The US doesn't want it. The tariffs are already high enough that the cars are not coming in.
Right.
But at these levels, the solar panels and batteries stop too.
Right.
And we need those batteries. We need those solar panels. And you're not protecting domestic industries because they don't exist at a scale necessary to fill that void. And if you're going to make it so that Megapacks can't be built, all you're doing is driving up prices for people. Tesla will still make them. They'll still get their margin, but they won't be able to deploy them as efficiently and to as many use cases where they're really needed.
Question number 9, is Gigamex over? They're just going to turn it into an amusement park?
Yes, that's correct. It's going to be an amusement park. It's going to be, no, that's where they're going to put the Tesla Welcome Center for all locations. You just have to go to Mexico and then don't worry, they'll call your number. I believe it is indefinitely on hold. I don't think it had anything to do with upcoming tariffs and those, because the world is quite large. The simplicity of the Cybercab means that just with existing floor space, they could build a whole lot of them. I think once they get them dialed in, it doesn't make sense to not build them everywhere. I think Mexico would build them for export to all of Central South America and parts of the Pacific Rim. But they were saying, oh, yeah, we could build 2 to 4 million. And I'm looking at that going, I'm sorry, isn't that my number? Isn't that the number that I said? Because as you know, I analyzed the factories a little bit
Yeah.
and I was able to put that one together. 2 to 4 million could be too many units for Central South America and parts of the Pacific Rim. It could be too large of production. But I still think that that could happen, but I don't see it happening in the next 24 months.
Wow. Okay. All right. Bonus. Well, it's actually question number 10, but it's kind of a bonus question because it's kind of more for it isn't just fun. As you well know, I'm sure you know this. By the way, this is a political question, but it's political science, not politics. Okay.
Okay.
So for months and months and months, I've been making this statement. You've probably heard me say it, and that is that Elon's move to the right has made him very unpopular with some people on the left, but that eventually that would make him more popular with people on the right. Well, now with this massive investment that he's made of time and energy and the numbers that he's pulling at these events, he's going and doing his own events now, political events, and getting huge crowds and people cheering and going crazy. Do you believe that from a political science standpoint, that this is likely, and by the way, I've been saying it for a long time, but I started to see other people saying it over the weekend on X. Do you believe that this could more or less double the TAM in the United States as conservatives go, okay, Elon, we're okay with you now, because even though we, earlier were upset because we were being forced to get electric vehicles, now we like you, so we'll take a second look.
I think doubling is wildly optimistic and absolutely over the top. I don't see that being a possibility. My litmus test is when they stop rolling coal on Teslas. That's when the right has accepted Elon and Tesla as one of their own. You can like someone without buying their products. Maybe the CEO of Nickelodeon's a really cool dude. I'm not watching Nickelodeon, and no disrespect to
Nickelodeon.
to Nickelodeon or any product that I don't purchase. I think the better analogy could be that they respect Elon, but they're just not in the market for what they consider Tampax. So I think they would need. I don't think, and the other problem becomes a lot of these rural voters who feel that their message is echoed by Elon don't live in places where the charging network is adequate for their needs, or they, I know people who live, who work in rural areas, who really want an electric truck, but it's just not possible for what they do yet. This drives me crazy. Did I bring the bugs with me? Maybe. So I think that, I don't see the shift happening anywhere near quick enough. The reason that they're still selling is because they're so much better than the competition. And I was asked by Will from Tesla Jigsaw. He interviewed me over the weekend. He said, if for some reason, like they're gone tomorrow, you cannot buy a Tesla, what are you buying? And I said, oh man, because I've reviewed a lot of cars.
Right.
But for me, the supercharging network is a big one, but much, much bigger is the autonomy. I can't go back to driving myself, man. I would just drive a whole lot less. I would go to fewer events. I would engage with the community less, because that's for the birds, man. I just can't do it. So what I would have to do is spend a month figuring out who has the second best cruise control. And that's probably what I would buy, even if it's not the best car. And then, of course, I'm still stuck on Electrify America. And the really comical thing is, just as the entire market is going to finally shift to the North American charging standard, Tesla's going wireless. The best plug is no plug.
Do you think, wireless on the Cybertruck?
Just on the cabs. It works for the joke, Randy.
Oh, I see. Okay. You got me all nervous there and concerned. So, okay. All right. So you're still not gonna buy into my theory, huh?
Well, not yet. The evidence hasn't presented itself. I mean, if your theory is that eventually more people will want to buy them, that is very likely. Doubling the TAM is not is. I mean, even increasing it 50%. Um, there's a lot of the country doesn't have the concentration of chargers that would make it possible. All the chargers are in blue districts, so that's a choice that Tesla made early on based
Yeah.
on who was already buying them. And I
Yeah,
mean, there are some,
I would never,
some.
yeah, I was not buying into the idea that it was a 100% increase to the TAM. That was somebody else's ex post over the weekend. But my theory would be like everything else, it's all in the margin. And so you have a marginal buyer out there.
Yeah.
The marginal buyer has been going, I don't want to buy any electric car because I'm feeling, again, I know conservatives that feel this way. I know members of my family that feel this way. Okay. I'm not going to buy an electric car because I feel that I'm being pressured, forced, by big government, by big brother to do it.
They need to grow up.
They need to grow up. I wouldn't argue that for a minute. That's not the question. The question is, there's lots of, everybody needs to grow up. I need to grow up. But the question is, in the margin, and in margin matters. If you marginally start to move opinion to where people go, oh, I'm going to take a second look now. Then all of a sudden you get a marginal buyer coming in. He then might be a community leader. You start to get a new round of first movers.
Do you invest in Tesla for marginal growth?
For marginal growth.
I mean, you're talking about increasing just along the margins, and what if it increases 1%, 2%, 3% next year? That's not enough. That's not enough. That won't get us the 20, 30% growth. It's the strength of the products that's doing it. And yeah, I get that he has his freedom to express himself in any way he'd like. I hope that no one would tell me what I can and can't say. Of course they do. They always do. I've made videos where I criticized the Babylon Bee, and that resulted in death threats. So
death threats.
Literal death threats against my family. So cancel culture is alive and real, I wish to assure you, but there are but Elon's decision to campaign for candidates doesn't just affect him or Tesla. It can lead to second and third order effects. A lot of channels that cover Tesla have less viewers because we are losing people from the left much faster than people from the right are coming in to take their place. And it's very frustrating and makes my job difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then again, I'm trying to do this as political science, not as political as
Art.
politics. And so you would say that the people that are leaving either their investment thesis, their interest in the category or the interest in Tesla, or their decision to purchase a Tesla, you would think that those people are the no vote, so to speak, that's already been happening for a year is having a larger impact than the yes vote that might be coming from the other side that's saying, well, if this guy says this, this, and this, I need to take another look.
I don't know if it's measurable.
Okay.
I think and if it is, it's certainly too soon to say. There are definitely people all the way on the left who will say, I'm just not going to buy another one. And I know people like that who have ample means and have said, I'm going with Rivian. And then there are people on the very far right who might say, I was gonna get some other car, but instead I'll get a Tesla. I haven't met them, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. That's my bubble. That's where I am. I think the growth that we're looking for is the 80% in the middle whose calculus is different, who are able to look at the quality of the vehicle. If Tesla was making a car that was exactly as good as some other brand, they'd be in trouble. And maybe someday Tesla will only make a car that's exactly as good as the others. Today is not that day. And
Not
we can
expecting it
see
anytime soon.
we can see the production roadmap for all the companies. It's not coming in the next 3 years.
Right.
And I don't know if Elon will be actively involved in Tesla in 3 years. He might be dedicating so much time to SpaceX because the
Moonshot.
Mars is within
Moonshot.
sight.
Moonshot.
Yeah. Moonshot sounds not even ambitious enough to describe what SpaceX is doing. The moon, that's where we park and regroup.
Right.
That's our Missouri. That's our jumping off point.
Missouri. You said Missouri.
Yeah. Of course I did.
Say Missouri. I say anyway. Okay. So
You say Louisville, I say Lurville.
Louisville. Something
All
like
right. If you're in the audience and you know the correct pronunciation of Lurville,
Yeah.
let us know in the comments below.
Please. And Narlands too, because it goes together. Okay.
It does.
So, all right. So that's all we got for now. We will see you again in 5 minutes or tomorrow, depending on where you're located. And as always, Brian, thank you for coming on and answering my weird questions.
Very weird.
Very weird. Okay. It's been great talking to you folks.